Candidly, every HR person on the planet knows, and every employee knows, that the annual review process it's a 100-year-old process, and developed by the U.S. Army 100 years ago. It brings anxiety into every conversation, and candidly, all the research says it doesn't change performance. Yet, all this discussion about moving to something different, 70% of large organizations today still do annual reviews, right?
Welcome to the Future of Less Work, the podcast that's piecing together the puzzle in the changing world of work. I'm Nirit Cohen. With me today is Doug Dennerline, CEO of BetterWorks. Hi, Doug.
How are you, Nirit? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. And I'm really curious, if you have to put a title on the piece of the future of work puzzle that you are working on, what would it be?
Well, the notion of work is going to change dramatically, in my opinion, with the innovation of AI and how it can remove rote work for people, and people can step up and work on things that are much more strategic. It can help us in this whole skills discussion that's happening, this over discussion of skills, in my opinion. In all honesty, it's been around marketplaces, which to me aren't seeing the pickup very well, because it's just displaying what you think your skills are. There's no validation of skills. It's a matchmaking place. And so I don't know that the technology hasn't gotten where it needs to. I think AI is going to change that.
Yeah. And I think you've touched on so many things here, but I actually want to go back to that whole idea of what skills do we actually have right today? One of the big issues, we've been talking about this idea that we're shifting from kind of the resume of what we studied and the jobs we did to skills-based and the potential. We've been talking about this for a really long time, and we haven't figured it out because a lot of it's self-reported. And when we self-report it, everybody says, they're good with people, they're good with innovation, they're good with, whatever, choose your skill. So AI is really an interesting opportunity for us to maybe make a better dent in what we really mean.
Yeah, very
Can
true.
you see where that will take us? Can you already see that?
Well, we can. We're in the middle of developing a capability in our platform. So, we're kind of aimed at performance management in a new way, and I can talk about that later on. But it's a notion of all this data in our platform around feedback you've gotten from managers. It's people you interact with. It's recognition you received. It's all this data. We can point AI at it, and it can look at validating skills that you say you have. A manager can say, you can say you have a skill, and your manager can say, yeah, they do have that skill, or third parties that you deal with, or LinkedIn profiles or education that you've created can all validate the use that says, I actually do have that skill. So you'll see in our application that we've kind of done it in a UI where it's 1 to 4 stars, and 1 star says you say you have that skill. 4 stars says everybody says you have that skill. It'll also do things.
Yes, so it's almost like the system we have today for freelancers, or some of those other platforms. You're basically bringing that internally to the organization.
That's right. And so it's using data, which has been really hard to do in the skills arena, to validate that there is the skill that we say that we have. It'll also, if you think over the course of time, it knows AI will know who you are, how long you've been in the job, all the feedback you received. It'll also make recommendations on skills that it thinks you should have based upon the role that you have, or where you and your manager say you want to go.
There's a quote I really loved from your intro on the BetterWorks 2024 Skills Fitness Report, where you basically said, a skills-focused approach values employees based on what they bring to the meeting to meet the current challenges rather than their roles and goals, right? And it occurred to me, we've been talking about skills in the context of external hires for a really long time, but you're actually taking this into the organization and basically talking about, who do you have inside, and how do we put the right people on the right job from the inside?
That's right. Well, think about the way that the reason it's been so hard for so long, Nirit, is companies tend to be focused on this quarter, and let's deliver the goals that we set for this quarter, and not thinking about what has to happen in 3 or 4 or 5 years from today in terms of changes to technology, and not thinking about what are the future skills that the organization needs. It's been, and building a skills library is, I've never been a fan of them. By the time they're built, they're outdated. And especially in the world of AI, it's, the skills that we need to have changed dramatically in the 2 years since AI has come out. What might have gotten you a job isn't going to keep you in a job unless you've really embraced AI as an organization. And so now, for the first time, instead of having this really hard cultural thing around skills, it'll be easy now to identify who you are, not your education, but maybe you got educated in something, but how did you bring it to work and how did you develop it in terms of your people skills, your communication skills, your other skills in terms, especially in leadership. And now it'll be much easier to do that in an organization and find out where your best people are and what are those skills and how can you help continue to develop them.
So how do we even build kind of the skills data systems? Because even the words we use, like, people skills, that's way too broad.
Yeah.
I think last I saw, we saw some analysis of job postings across, you see this across industries and across jobs, and everybody's looking for the same, 50% of the descriptions are saying the same thing. So we're not speaking skills in a granular enough way to be able to even understand what we need, let alone measure and identify.
Yeah, no, that's a very true statement. And I think, historically, and one of the things that we're in the HR business as a company. And so companies tend to have a real opinion about their skills in their industry at some point in time. And so we've had to learn to adjust how we talk to people around skills, because sometimes we have to adopt their skills library into how we use and talk about them. I think if we could have a more open-minded HR people in leadership, I think AI will now start to tell you the skills that you need to have in order to succeed. And candidly, I think those skills are not independent of the industry you're in. They're the natural skills that people have across industries. And yes, there'll be some skills that are very finite to a role in some industry, but broad leadership skills, I think, go across all markets. And AI will now
we
discover
used to call them soft skills or power skills, where clearly a lot of people will need them. But I believe the more we work digitally, right, the more systems will be able to analyze what we don't even know that we're doing, and then maybe start creating a lower granularity of skills. A little bit like what happened to marketing. If you think of social media marketing, right? Instead of marketing to everyone or profiling, they started really tailoring it to the individual. I'm thinking the more we do the work this way, some of it's a scary thought, because it starts, you kind of think, okay, they'll know more about me than I can know about myself.
Very true statement. And I think where we're headed as an organization, one of the things that we do today is when managers, and we believe in not backwards looking once a year, twice a year performance review kind of thing, filled with bias as you sit and think about what that person did over the last year, but more about goal setting on a quarterly basis and then giving feedback on progress on goals or lack of progress on goals. And feedback you can give to people on either a scheduled basis or an ad hoc basis. Well, now we use AI to look at the language the manager is speaking to an individual about, and we correct it in case it has bias in it. And we make it professional language, we make it actionable, and then they accept that language or not accept that language. But what we also do is we show what we changed and why we changed it to the manager, saying that, what you were saying might have been inappropriate for the following reason. So again, educating managers along the way how to talk to people and give them feedback that they can actually do something with.
So basically like a co-pilot for performance reviews.
100%.
So you guys are, you've been working in the space of performance management, and we've been changing it for a really long time, right? So it used to be this one annual instance, and like you said, the performance, what you do great, what you didn't do, what you need to be doing. How are you seeing the evolution of where we're at and where we're going with performance?
Yeah, Nirit, it's very interesting to me. I've been around, so I'm the ex-president of Success Factors, so I've been around the HR space for a very long time. And we've been talking about redefining the process, because candidly, every HR person on the planet knows, and every employee knows, that the annual review process it's a 100-year-old process, and developed by the U.S. Army 100 years ago. It brings anxiety into every conversation. And candidly, all the research says it doesn't change performance. Yet, all this discussion about moving to something different, 70% of large organizations today still do annual reviews, right?
Yeah, I think in HR thinks of it as a safety net because, if everybody were a really great manager and gave you ongoing, valuable feedback, we'd be great. But you need like that safety net to make sure that you have that
Well,
stop point.
I think it's that. And I also think it's a scary proposition to put an organization through such a large change when you're moving from something that's once a year, twice a year to something that's forward looking and all the time. Millennials don't want to be talked to, or Gen Z or Gen Y, once a year or twice a year. They want to know how they're doing every day.
Yeah,
And
real time feedback.
real time feedback. And our people are
Yep.
in our application every 3 to 5 days, not once or twice a year. But that is a massive cultural change for organizations. And so it's being brave enough to say to the organization, hey, what we're doing doesn't work, and we're going to do something different, and it's going to be hard for a while, but we're going to get there. And the benefit will be the following is we'll have more engaged people, we'll have lower turnover, we'll have better skilled employees that are enjoying work more than they did historically.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the schedule, the kind of the having the conversation more frequently, but there's also the what the conversation's about.
That's
So if we kind of circle back to the whole idea of skills, because it used to be the conversation was about either inputs or outputs, right?
That's right.
It was kind of what you did and what you accomplished if we were really good at it.
And what people said about you that you worked with.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. But I keep thinking we used to say training is one of those things that everybody said you needed to do, but nobody recognized you for because you were measured on your delivery. You weren't measured on your, staying relevant to be able to deliver
Yeah.
tomorrow. You see that changing?
I do. If you think about, and this is going to be right around the corner in terms of how AI can help organizations actually identify where are the managers that are developing people and where are the managers that aren't, and what are the skills the managers have that are developing people, and what are the skills the managers that aren't don't have. And you'll be able to identify through AI now to directly in more of a private conversation outside of our application, saying where your strong managers are and where your weak managers are, and where they're weak, what they need to work on. And so it'll be, not someone's opinion about your work, but it'll be based upon looking at the outcomes of many, many managers from many, many companies and having AI do analysis of that and tell you where your stars are.
So basically, the more we have data on the industry and it's kind of peer data, the more we can tell you where your gaps are.
That's right. That's right.
And then how do we help? So you're talking about verifying skills data a little better. How do we help people build the skills?
And again, that'll be connecting your where you need to increase your skills to the developmental plan, right? That you and your manager can agree on and point you to content that can help give you that skill, and what are the things that you can go do to grow that skill and make that a goal. And then look back in 90 days and say, did you make progress on that goal? What I think will happen is the evidence of being a good manager now will be on it'll be on did you deliver what you were asked to deliver on, but did you develop people inside of your organization? If you want to be promoted, were the people that you manage growing in their own, evolution inside of the organization, or are they stagnant, or are you turning people over?
So something really big needs to change in how we define success and frankly, how we measure managers for that to happen.
100%.
Because as long as we're measuring managers for delivering work, then we're not recognizing them for, growing people.
That's right. And I think the world's going to go to a place where people need to find managers that grow people and promote them so they can continue to grow people. I've always been amazed, and I even wrote a book about this a couple of years ago with a colleague. But if you find a really strong HR leader and a CEO who understands that people are the only best asset in an organization today, and innovation comes from people, and understands that they need to do things differently today with people in order to win in the market, that's a real win for an organization, right? The CEO understands, hey, we're going to go do this thing and we're going to do it differently and we're going to get forward looking and we're going to grow our people. And that's what I'm invested in. Not did I deliver to Wall Street and, it's only about revenue. Because the idea here is when you do invest in people the way that good CEOs and head of HRs do, the result is growth in revenue. It's higher, satisfaction. It's hiring better people. But it's amazing to me how many CEOs don't even want to be kind of connected to HR. Who it's like with that HR stuff, that's what your job is, not my job.
Yeah, I think the last few years, so starting COVID, right, we learned something about what happens to an organization when the processes change. And I have been watching what I call the changing social contract with people in work, right? So this whole conversation on working in the office, coming back to the office, I don't think it's about the office, because people are social beings. We want to talk to people. So it's not really about the office itself. It's about, do I am I working from where I am getting value and contributing, delivering value, and kind of, are you building the processes that allow people to gain value from interacting with their peers and their leaders? And do you need, the physical space for that? Um, I just kind of listening to you talk about the importance of people skills. That hasn't changed. I mean, we've been talking about the managers needing to lead people so that people can do the work for a really long time. So I'm wondering what is changing. And I think part of that is people aren't willing to just show up physically anymore. And so managers can't wing it anymore. If you can't talk to people, you're not going to get the work done.
Well, command and control leadership is, in my opinion, long gone. It's no longer about that. I think empathy is probably the best quality of a good leader. It's understanding what are the dynamics around a person and that you're managing at home. I love this saying where I think, your job as a manager is to integrate work into your life of your employee, not the other way around. It's not integrating your life into work. It's the other way around. And so
Yeah. And it used to be the other way
it
around.
used
I
to be
think
the other
that
way
we're
around.
seeing this.
That's right.
Yeah.
And many cultures around the world, kind of, it still is in some places where I tell you what to do, you do it, and if you don't do it, I fire you. But true in many of the advanced cultures of the world, it's all around understanding now that I care about you, I want to grow you, I want you to become better than you can possibly be, and I'm invested in the growth of you, and that means I'm going to help grow the skills that you need to have. And when I do give you feedback, it's coming from a place of wanting to make you better, not wanting to criticize you.
Yeah, and I think I wonder if you're seeing a difference in the idea that we're growing skills. Um, you know, what happens if people get the skills and now they leave me and they go, use them somewhere else? So we're seeing that as a barrier.
Well, for the cultures that are invested in the things I've talked about, those people don't leave. I mean, in the Great Resignation, the turnover at BetterWorks was 3%. And we let people show up here authentically to work. We value their opinion. You have a voice in this company, no matter where you are. I don't believe in lines, and people enjoy the environment, and so they don't leave. And so I think that's the goal of leaders, to create the environment that is involved in that. I'm very proud of that, by the way. I mean, I feel very good about what we've been able to accomplish here, and it's kind of a need to be too, Nirit, in what we do, because what we try to do is sell what we do to other people based upon our application.
Yeah, so you're testing it on yourself.
Exactly.
By the way, I totally agree with you. I think in a world where it's a lot more important to stay relevant in the market, to actually develop your own skills. It's not your profession or your employer that will keep you employable. It's your ability to stay relevant in the market.
Right.
And so it becomes, skills are the new currency of work, right? You go to work for places that upskill you or reskill you or keep you relevant.
That's right. Well, and I would also say, yes, it's a manager's job to grow the people that report to them and make them better. But don't wait for your manager to do that. Own your own career, own your own growth, and invest in yourself and where you want to go. Now, what's great is when you do that, you articulate that to leadership, and then they help you achieve it. If you're having to
Yeah.
go around a company in order to grow, then that's not good, and they're going to leave.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I actually think, first of all, we know that people need to take ownership of learning and growing their own skills.
Yeah,
So it's actually making time, even putting budget and definitely attention on being able to do that is really important. Sometimes, though, part of growing means kind of shifting away from your regular day job. And that's where we circle back with performance management, because as long as we only measure and recognize people for delivery, we don't help them or encourage them to actually go
yeah.
go grow their
No, that's
skills.
right. We one of the things that we do here is part of our application is a goal setting application. And what we do and what we recommend to people is we do that quarterly. And you want to have two or three goals that you're doing for the company and making sure you're aligned to the growth of the company's goals. But it's really important that there's one or two goals that are based upon what are you trying to achieve with your manager and the growth of you and the organization. And there's regular check-ins on those. Let's work on this, and how'd you do against those goals to make sure. And I call it then the work that you're doing is the value is greater than the tax of the process, right? If my manager is now talking to me about me and helping to grow me, they're invested in me, then I'm willing to do the other thing, which is deliver the things I need to the company in order to grow the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah, totally. And I think the just having the conversation, it kind of shifts things around,
That's right.
and suddenly opportunities show up because you've verbalized, starting to yourself and then to others what you care about, what you
Correct.
want, which basically goes back to why processes are important, because some managers will do it naturally, others won't.
That's
But
right.
if you have a process built around that, yeah, totally. So I'm wondering, from all of your experience in this field, and how performance is kind of changing, and how this conversation between employees and managers on their skills and on their employability is changing. If you had to pick up one thing from all of those insights, that's the single most important thing for organizations to pay attention to right now, what would that be?
I think for the longest period of time, first line managers are the most unthought about asset inside of an organization. And I think it's the most important job in a company. There's a lot of attention right now to managers of managers of managers of managers and flattening organizations. But the irony of that is, yes, there's probably cost savings there, but the most important person in the company is the manager that manages people that get the work done. And we've largely ignored them because it's just been a hard spot to invest in. And I think now with AI, it's going to be a great opportunity to be able to help grow managers. I mean, how often do we promote someone into a manager's role and it's on the job training? There you go. You're now a manager. You have literally no skills about how to do that. Now with AI and other things,
How does AI help us there?
uh, I think AI over time is going to say these are the 7 or 8 skills that strong leadership needs to have. It's empathy, it's communication skills, it's being able to give valuable feedback that's not negative, or the tone is in the correct tone. AI will give you a list of 10 things that you can go into that conversation with about leading with something positive, then giving, examples of when, that kind of actions happen. It'll make managers better.
No, so you're basically, I think what I'm hearing you say, right? You're basically saying, if you're a manager right now, right, you have AI as a personal coach
Yes.
to help you think through management situations, right? And we know this, and it could be generic tools or it could be specific tools, but basically, here's the situation, here's the person, here's what I'm trying to communicate, written or
Yeah.
or spoken, doesn't matter. Here's what the person's looking for, what are some activities or some projects that
Write
would
a good
help
prompt.
build that. Basically everything from how you talk about it through to how you actually make it work.
100%. Maybe the difference between us is and others is You can do that with ChatGPT today. You can do that with Claude. You get lots of great advice. But you're training a large language model. And with ours, it's a private language. We have a large language model, but it's being fed all HR language between managers and employees. So it's training on things that are relevant to having good conversations. And so it might give you a better result than others if you're just going out into the large language world, if you will.
Yeah, so you're basically saying we don't need to explain so much because we're within this context of the right conversation.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. What I really hope will get us though is that we start assessing better. And I always think, again, I go back to it's a little bit scary, but today you get the answers when you bother to ask the questions. And I'm thinking, how your phone tells you you need to leave for the meeting because it knows what the traffic is and it knows where you are and where you need to go, which used to be scary, but we got used to it. I'm thinking something like that. So basically, I'd want my tools to be able to tell me, I know your style, I know their style. You're going to this conversation. Here's what you should be, thinking about.
Exactly, Nirit. I mean, in our product today, one of the biggest problems with feedback that people is you're using your memory of what you interacted with them or the feedback that you might have gotten about them, and it's very bias based or recency bias at least. And with AI, when you go in to give somebody a formal feedback, what we show you is their body of work right next to here's what everybody said about them, here's their goals, here's what they did against their goals, here's the recognition they received. And so you can look at their body of work as you determine what feedback you want to give them. And so I think that's a really strong way to think about not doing it based upon recency bias.
Okay, awesome. So Doug, as we wrap up, I wanted to ask you actually for a question, not an answer. So I do believe the future of work is something that we're co-creating, right? And we have to start exploring more about what could be versus what used to be. So what do you think is the one key question we should all be asking about the future of work?
Do you know where your great leaders are? And do you know what made them great leaders? And then did you take that data and spread it around everybody that leads?
Wow. So basically, is there a way for us to learn about what works from what works?
Today in organizations, you maybe go down a layer or two to do succession planning. In today's world, you should be able to do it with every manager in an organization, irrespective of the size.
Very interesting. Yeah, I believe the predictive models and the more we interact through digital tools, the more the systems will be able to know about us then help us do something with it. I hope we learn how to do that properly. Wow. Thank you, Doug Dennerline, CEO of BetterWorks, for joining me today to help piece together this puzzle that is the future of work. If you'd like to check out the Skills Fitness Report, there's a lot of data in there that got me thinking, or learn more about Doug and BetterWorks. You'll find all the links as well as a recap of today's episode and additional resources in the podcast text. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to follow The Future of Less Work wherever you get your podcasts. Leave comments or reviews to let us know what you think. Thank you for joining us on The Future of Less Work. We're piecing together the ever-changing puzzle of work. And remember, the new social contract is a win-win between people and organizations. Your best people work not because they have to, not because you tell them to, not because you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because working for you is their way of achieving their purpose in life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep building the future of work, one piece at a time. Thank you.